Welcome to another CMC podcast. Today's podcast is going to be an introduction and give you some background about the GRIMP North America 2022 podcast series that we're going to be releasing after this podcast. For our listeners who aren't familiar with GRIMP, GRIMP is a French acronym that translates to Dangerous Environment Search and Intervention Team. And the competition was started back in 2006 in Namur, Belgium by the regional fire department. And since then, it's expanded out to multiple locations in China, Taiwan, Japan started one in 2019, and there's talk of several more throughout the world. The first GRIMP North America began in the U.S. in 2019 with a competition on the Battleship Iowa in Los Angeles, California. A second GRIMP North America competition was held in March of 2022 on the Iowa. The mission of GRIMP is to foster learning and collaboration within the global rescue community. The vision of GRIMP is as teams work to sharpen their skills and response capabilities, rescues will become safer and increasingly successful for everyone involved. GRIMP North America 2022 consisted of 12 teams from around the world competing in 6 scenarios. There was 5 teams from the U.S. We had the Rose City Ropers from Portland, Oregon, Magic Valley Paramedics from Idaho, OCFA 91, which is a team from Orange County Fire Authority in California. We also had Orange County Fire Rescue from Florida, and then Peak Rescue from Wyoming. The international teams that competed in GRIMP were the Fire Brigade from Berlin, Germany, Val de Sambre from Belgium, the 49th Parallel from Canada, TNT Work and Rescue from Canada, Yes Ma'am, which was an all-female team made up from women around the world, the Mora Firefighters in Belgium, and Intervention Rescue from the UK. Each team had up to 90 minutes to complete each scenario in which the victim had to be located, accessed, packaged, and then transported to a designated area. Time didn't stop until the victim, all the team members, and all their gear were back in the designated finish area. So here's an overview of the 6 scenarios. We'll start with room with a view. The team had to access a worker who had suffered an unknown medical condition on the flybridge area of the ship. So 4 members of the rescue team had to ascend up fixed ropes and perform a knot pass on the pre-placed fixed ropes. The victim had to be packaged in a provided litter and then lowered down vertically to the ship's deck. The use of the litter tender was optional in this event. Each rescue team member then had to descend and join the patient with all their gear in the designated area. So next we'll talk about the stacks. So the team had to access a worker who had suffered an unknown medical condition located on a deck in between the bow and the aft smokestacks. The rescue team had to climb the bow side stack via a ladder and then access the victim from an elevated location. The teams had to construct a 2-track tension highline between the bow and the aft stacks, capable of both vertical and horizontal movement, and then properly package the victim in a rescue litter and transport them to the upper deck near the bow side stack. They weren't allowed to detension the highlines to achieve vertical movement. So next we'll head down to the Catacombs. The team had to access a worker who had suffered an unknown medical condition somewhere inside the Catacombs, which is a maze-like section of compartments and bulkheads down in the bowels of the ship. So at least 2 team members had to enter the catacombs and then locate the patient. Once the patient was located, they assessed for injuries and then packaged them in a provided sked and extricated them from the space. So next we'll talk about Broadway. So Broadway is the main aisle of the ship below deck that runs from the front to the back of the ship. The team had to access a worker who suffered an unknown medical condition somewhere inside the boiler room. The patient was accessed through a floor hatch in the main hallway known as Broadway. The hatch was the entrance to a real small vertical shaft called an escape shuttle. The team had to set up an Arizona vortex, have at least 2 team members enter the escape shuttle using rope systems from Broadway, locate the victim, assess them for injuries, then package the victim in a supplied dragon lift, and haul them back up the Broadway via the escape shuttle. So no team members or the victim were permitted to use the ladder in the escape shuttle for access or egress into the boiler room. The 5th scenario was Shaft Alley. So the team had to locate an individual who had been reported missing in an area known as Shaft Alley, which is the area around the main shafts that turn the propellers of the battleship. So the teams had to descend several levels down, then traverse the Shaft Alley, and then ascend fixed ropes in another vertical shaft to find the victim. So once located, then the victim had to be packaged in a provided dragon lift and had to extricate them. There were no limits as to the number of rescues that were allowed down in Shaft Alley. So the fixed ladders to access Shaft Alley, as well as any other interior ladders, weren't able to be used by the rescue teams or the victim. The 6th scenario was very appropriately named, "You're Not Going to Like This." This scenario took place in the wing void area, which is located between the inner and outer hulls of the ship. The rescuers had to locate a worker who had suffered an unknown medical condition while working in a permit required confined space that had been downgraded to an alternate entry or a C5 space. So a minimum of 3 of the rescuers had to enter the wing void area, which is just a series of interconnected horizontal and vertical spaces with multiple small bulkhead openings. Once a victim was located, the rescuers had to package the victim in a provided dragon lift and remove them from the confined space. So the fixed ladders to the vertical portions of the wing void were not able to be used by the rescue teams or the victim. Again, the team's time did not end in any of these scenarios until the victim, all the rescue team members, and all the gear were back in the designated finish area. Stay tuned for future podcasts when you'll have the opportunity to listen to interviews with all of the team that competed in GRIMP North America 2022, so you can hear their take on the scenarios and what they did to prepare for them, and also what they took away from these scenarios and are able to put to use. We'll also be doing a podcast with some of the evaluators from GRIMP North America, and you'll get their take on what they saw and what they learned from watching the different teams compete. So thanks for tuning into this short introduction podcast, and stay tuned for all the podcasts in this series.